Today is Drawing a Landscape, part 2. Last week we did houses and a road and a horizon line. This week we're going to do trees. Here's the tree that I sketched initially, but I've changed my mind. Since I've been drawing my other tree houses, I decided to do a different tree that I think will work better. So you can change your mind too. You might want to do more sketching. I changed my mind. I still need to create the feeling of space. So I had 3 houses, one in the foreground, one in the middle ground, one in the background. Now I need 3 trees, one in the foreground. That's what I'm doing right now. Now, it is in the backyard. It is a little bit farther away from my house. It's behind my house. So watch this. When I draw this tree, there's going to be overlap. The placement of it is going to be a little bit higher up my paper. I do not like the shadow that appeared when I was drawing, but now you can see it. You can see the base of my trunk of my tree. Remember, it's a stylized tree. We didn't have to draw realistic here. But the base of my trunk is higher up than my house, and it's not see-through. Neither the tree or the house is see-through. So where the house overlaps the tree, you can't see it. And where my middle ground tree my foreground tree overlaps my middle ground house, you'll see that I have to erase some of the middle ground house. There I go, erasing some. Now, right now, I'm sketching in the basics, not the detail. So I've got my trunk. I've got some branches, which are triangles, and then leaves, which are all circles. Okay, now I'm going to go to my middle ground. It is also behind my middle ground house. It is a little bit farther up the paper than the middle ground house. So notice the trunk of the tree, the base is a little farther up. Again, I'm doing some basics and not a lot of detail. My trunk, my branches, my leaves. Background house, ooh, so simple, so quick. Again, it moved up farther up the paper. Now I'm going to come back and add some detail. I'm adding in what would be, I don't know, like the bark of my branches, right? If you went outside, you'd see kind of lines for your bark. So I'm doing bark of my branches. I'm also going to I'm adding in some swirls to those circles to give my leaves a little bit more texture. All right, so my foreground tree should have detail like my foreground house does, right? It's bigger. The placement of it is closer to the bottom of the paper, and it's got more darker value. Right, I went to the middle ground, it went so fast. I added a touch more detail, some lines for bark, some lines in my leaves, but not too much. Let's go work on that road. All right, so the road also has foreground, middle ground, and background. So I need to adjust the size and value and placement all along. So notice towards the bottom of the paper in the foreground, I'm making it's thicker and darker. I use that 1-point perspective technique again. I added on additional lines. Now you know how most roads have that line going down the center? Watch, we're going to do that. So I drew 2 dots in the middle of my road, 2 spots, what would be the width of that dotted line, and I took them back to the vanishing point. Now what I'm doing is I'm actually erasing so that instead of a solid line, it becomes those individual lines. And what I also am doing is making sure those get smaller and smaller, so my erase marks get closer and closer together. Again, remember, my road is traveling through the foreground, middle ground, and background. So I need to adjust the size of things as I move up the paper. I adjust the value and the size. So these lines, I'm going to put the ends on them so you can see how they get smaller as I go back in space. They also get thinner because of me using that 1-point perspective and having both lines head back to the same dot. Not only can I make them get smaller, but they also just automatically got thinner because of that 1-point perspective technique. Now I'm going to add in some value. I cannot forget value. So towards closer here, my value is going to be a little bit darker. That's the way I went with on this piece, is it's darker towards the front and lighter towards the back. Now I'm going to look and just start going through and adjusting value everywhere. I want this piece to feel like there's lots of space. And right now it does, but a lot of the ground has the same value. So I'm going to go to my foreground house, start to darken stuff up to really kind of set my darkest tone. So I'm in my foreground house, adding some darkness. Ooh, look, I'm rubbing my hand on my paper. I want to show you a technique. Now that we're using a lot of graphite, if you are drawing, your hand rubs against the paper, you're going to start spreading it around and start smearing your drawing. Grab a spare piece of paper, put it under your hand so you don't smear that graphite. I always forget halfway through until I start seeing some smears. So grab that paper, don't wait halfway like I did, and use it early so that you're not kind of smudging your drawing. Protect it. So again, I'm in my foreground, I'm making things darker, I'm going back into my detail, adding some darker values, thickening up the lines. I really want that foreground to pop with the dark values and the detail. Remember, road has foreground. I'm going and double checking those. All the foreground should be darker. Right? Now I'm going to go adjust my horizon line. It's, there should be kind of grass and hills back there. So I made the line a little wavier. I put in 2 lines for a mountain back there. And now I'm going to add some texture into this foreground grass. So it's just little tiny lines, little tiny, not too dark, but a little texture. Now I'm adding some value. I put my pencil on the side like we did with the value scale. It looks like I'm going really fast, but I'm not. I will slow down this video here in a second to kind of show you more detailed of how I'm adding this value. But this takes a while, so I had to speed it up, all right? So I'm going in and adding value darker towards the front. Now, mountains would have tons of trees and grass, so those can be a little bit darker. I even kind of add in kind of waves of dark lines just to kind of give it a little bit more texture, as if there's more going on back there. I can't see it all because it's farther away and the values would blend. All right, here is me doing my final touches. This is where I've slowed down. Look, I've even gone into my house and I'm going to add value. I'm going to add value in these little pockets. That shouldn't be white, right? There shouldn't be many places that are still the white of the paper. So this is me slowing down a little bit, right? Just showing you how I go in and really look at things, really kind of darken up, really add value. Here's the final piece. You might be tempted to sign it. Don't do that yet. That's next week. Enjoy.